If you ever ask yourself, how do I deal with all the uncertainty, complexity, and chaos in life or work, this episode is for you. Because here's the truth. The deeper you go into business, career, or just life in general, the more chaos you will face. More moving parts, more noise, more unpredictability. And most people drown in it. But the people who succeed, whether in sales, business, or sports, don't run away from chaos. They learn to play with it. So today I will break down 4 universal laws of chaos and show you how understanding them makes you calmer, sharper, and better at navigating whatever comes your way. So welcome back to Catch the Zenith, the podcast about high performance and business. I'm Nicola, working in a B2B software startup in sales. And before we dive in, I want to give full props to entrepreneur Sam Ovens. I learned all of this from him, so check out his work at school.com or his software company and all his old YouTube videos. They're gold. Very, very good stuff. So, chaos is everywhere. It's a constant state of business, markets, teams, families, and even your own mind. There's a lot of chaos in this world. And if you try to process every comment, every email, every little data point, you will drown. And the way out is mental models. And mental models are simple lenses that help you cut through noise and see the underlying patterns. And once you do that, you stop being overwhelmed. You make smarter decisions, and instead of being just scared of chaos, you actually use it. And the first law I want to discuss today is entropy. Entropy means disorder, the natural pull toward breakdown and decline. So some examples: your body ages, a car rusts, shoes wear out, a gym habit dies if you stop training. Even real relationships drift apart if you don't invest in them. And there's no such thing as keeping things the same. Without effort, everything decays. And that means the fight against entropy is never ending. You don't just maintain your health, career, or skills. You either improve them or they decline. So the rule is simple. You always raise the standard. You always raise the bar. You eat a little better this year than last. You make the next sales call sharper than the last. You keep moving forward, or entropy drags you back. Now the second law is initial conditions. Everything starts with a beginning setup. Your family, your first job, your early habits, the first people on a team. And here's the key. Those starting points don't disappear. They replicate. They echo over time. So an example, your first sales manager shapes how you think about calls. A good one builds confidence that multiplies. A bad one plants fear that sticks for years. So that's in a business setting, the first hire, for instance. Or you think about fitness, gym. If you start lifting with bad form, those habits replicate into injury and frustration later. That can happen. And if you start with good form, you get stronger, faster, and safer. So initial conditions are like planting seeds. The tree that grows later will just be a bigger version of whatever was planted at the start. And that's why you want to get the small beginnings right. Early habits, first mentors, first customers, first teammates, they set the tone for everything that follows. And obviously that's quite a hard task and we do mistakes, but that's the ideal state. That's what I think is worth aiming for. The third law is feedback. Feedback is what makes progress exceptional, or failure spiral downward. You can think of learning a language. If you practice daily, you improve. The better you get, the more fun it becomes. And the more fun it becomes, the more you practice. That's a positive feedback loop. You get reinforced for your behavior. Or you can think about debt. You borrow a little, then interest stacks on interest, and soon you're buried. That's a negative feedback loop. And the same applies in sales. You make one call, it goes well, your confidence grows. That confidence makes the next call better. And that's feedback working for you. But if you choke one call, feel embarrassed, and avoid the next 5 calls, that's feedback working against you. So the key is simple. You design feedback loops that actually help you make you more productive or better in life. So small wins, quick adjustments, reinvesting gains. So don't let negative loops run your life. That's the third law, feedback. And now, the last one for today. The fourth law is non-linearity. Non-linearity means outcomes aren't straight lines. They curve either up or down based on entropy, initial conditions, and feedback. So you can take sport, for instance. A kid who's slightly taller at 12 gets more playtime. Coaches notice, teammates pass to him more, his confidence grows. He practices harder, and soon he's a star. And a small edge at the start explodes into a massive advantage down the line. And the same with careers. The person who gets one good mentor early can leapfrog others in just a few years. Or the opposite, one bad decision can spiral down fast. Now what's the lesson here? Don't underestimate small advantages or disadvantages. They compound, and that's why little habits like eating clean, making one extra cold call, like in my case as a cold caller, or reading 20 minutes a day become massive advantages later. And obviously, I'm simplifying a lot of here, and the world is way more complex than that, but just to drive the point home here. Now, when you understand these 4 laws, so entropy, initial conditions, feedback, and non-linearity, you stop fearing chaos. Or that's, I would say, part of it what helped me, or is helping me. And instead, you start using it. You fight entropy by always improving. You become always a little bit better. You can push yourself only if it's 1%. Like with this podcast. Hopefully, I got a little bit better comparing this episode with episode 1 of my podcast. But that's up to you to judge here. Or you design, and that's the second thing, you design strong initial conditions, that's the second law, by choosing your environment, mentors, and first moves carefully. And one way how to do that is thinking in nth order consequences. In other words, if I choose this mentor, the first thing that can happen is my productivity goes up because I know what to do in my job, for instance. And the second thing that can happen is I make more money. And because I make more money, I can maybe buy a house at one point. So there are many different consequences. But also doing the opposite thought experiment, if you have a bad mentor and telling you bad things, you can do the same forward-thinking, nth order consequences approach as well. So it's always worth carefully choosing your first action. And obviously we make mistakes. I did many mistakes, and that's part of the game. But sometimes strategically thinking into the future by just thinking about, okay, if I eat today bad stuff, I will not work out tomorrow. And if I don't work out, I'm less productive. I have brain fog. And if I have brain fog, long-term wise, I will lose my job. And if I lose my job, I can't pay rent. I can't make a living, and so on and so forth. And sometimes that can, at least in my case, help me right now in the moment to make a better decisions. And in keeping with that theme also of initial conditions, just thinking more carefully about the first move. Then we talked about the the third law, you build positive feedback loops into your habits and work. So we talked about feedback, which is building up on initial conditions. And then the last one is you embrace non-linearity. So knowing that small edges today snowball into huge results tomorrow. So chaos isn't your enemy, it's a playing field. And I think especially the last one is super, super powerful, that the small edges today snowball into huge results. And I think that's the theme of this episode, that those little small improvements that James Clear talks about in his book Atomic Habits, it's just super powerful. And it's also reinforcing, because let's take this podcast as an example. I started in 2020. I think on April 4th or 11th, not sure right now, with the first 3 episodes. And at that point, I wasn't very... If I compare the interviews back then with the interviews I do today, or I would say also the solo episodes, I think I improved a bit. And the reason why I improved a bit is I showed up consistently, obviously, over the course of the past 5-ish years. And that started at one point very much to compound. And obviously I have still a lot to learn in podcasting. I'm still far away from being an expert at podcasting, but I really believe if I do that for a long enough time horizon or time, I become very, very good. Another example is reading books. Reading books in the beginning is to a certain degree unrewarding. It can also be rewarding, at least if you have immediate effects on your relaxation status, or if you can be calm in the moment, so being more focused. But in terms of knowledge, if you are reading nonfiction, you read one book and you don't know much. You can retain maybe 5% of what you just read. But then you start reading the second book and the third book and the fourth book, and you start connecting the knowledge you acquired. In my case, it was reading 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, and learning that if you talk to people, you should first listen, or you should first seek to understand before you want to be understood. And just my caveat here, that's ideal. I'm not always doing that. I'm also not perfect, obviously, but I know that can help to have a flourishing, productive conversation. And then I read Beyond Order, or 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson, or I think it was Beyond Order, 12 More Rules for Life. And there was written that basically you can learn from everybody something, no matter in what circumstances or environments those people are. And that's more or less the same thing expressed with different words. And I started to connect that. And as simple as this sounds, it's super, super rewarding if you start to make sense of the world by connecting concepts and by seeing, this author wrote this and this author wrote this, but they mean the same thing. They just say it or they approach it from a different angle, from a different perspective. And again, in the beginning, quite non-rewarding, but if you start reading consistently, maybe every day, maybe per week, you read those 30, 40 pages, the knowledge starts to compound, and the reward is quite big because you become more knowledgeable, more literate, and your ability to focus increases, perhaps. At least this is what happened in my case. So all this to say that chaos isn't your enemy, it's the playing field. And here's the final truth. Life, work, and business are chaotic systems. It's almost inherent to it, or that's the nature of life. It's difficult to a certain extent if you want to live a good, meaningful life. And you don't win by removing chaos, you win by learning how it works, by embracing it to a certain extent. And once you understand entropy, initial conditions, feedback, and non-linearity, you start to see the hidden forces shaping outcomes. And when you see them, you can influence them. And that's how you turn chaos from something scary into something you can actually play with.